I used to believe I was one of the lucky ones. I thought I had it all. The boyfriend who made me feel like the center of the universe and a best friend who knew me better than anyone else. I didn't question it, not for a second. The two people I trusted the most were right there beside me, and I felt safe in that bubble we'd created. But bubbles always burst, and mine shattered in the ugliest way imaginable. What I didn't know back then was that the same hand I held so tightly under the table, the same smile that made me believe I was loved, was being offered to someone else when I wasn't looking. And not just to anyone, to her. To the girl whose secrets I held, whose shoulders I cried on, and who swore she'd never betray me. My best friend. It wasn't a short slip-up or a single mistake. No, this wasn't some drunken accident. It went on for months, hidden under my nose, carved into my life like a cruel joke. So many of the moments that once felt innocent, I would later replay in my head until I could almost hear the lies dripping off their voices. The late-night excuses, the sudden cancellations, the way my best friend seemed to pull away from me just as he drew me closer. The worst part wasn't even the cheating itself. It was how convinced they had me that everything was normal, that I was paranoid, insecure, dramatic. For months, I doubted myself while they smiled in my face, stringing me along like I was nothing more than a fool. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just break my heart, it broke me. I still remember the first time I noticed him. It was the kind of moment that sticks in your brain forever, like someone pressed play on the first scene of a movie you didn't realize you'd been cast in. He wasn't even doing anything extraordinary, just laughing with a group of friends in the hallway at school. But there was something about the way his smile lit up his whole face. It felt magnetic, like the kind of smile that made you want to be the reason it existed. At first, it was just a crush, one I swore I could control. I'd catch myself sneaking glances at him, my stomach tying itself into knots every time his eyes accidentally met mine. When he finally approached me, casual and unhurried, I wanted to believe it was nothing. But then he asked about something small I had mentioned in class, and that was the hook. He remembered. He noticed. That was how it started. The small ways he made me feel like I mattered. Soon enough, it snowballed. The texts after school that stretched on until midnight. The way he'd show up with my favorite snack because I'd once casually mentioned craving it. The excitement of hearing my phone buzz, seeing his name on the screen, and knowing he had chosen me out of everyone else. Falling for him wasn't a choice. It was more like gravity. When we officially became a couple, it felt surreal. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my best friend, my safe space, my entire world. With him, I felt seen in a way I never had before. He made me laugh until I couldn't breathe, teased me in ways that felt playful instead of cruel, and held me when I crumbled under the weight of small insecurities. I thought I had found the kind of love people wrote novels about. I let my walls down with him in ways I never thought I could. I shared secrets I hadn't told anyone else, about my family, my fears, the parts of myself I usually kept hidden. He made me believe vulnerability was safe, that when I handed someone my broken pieces, they wouldn't smash them further, they'd hold them gently. I didn't just fall in love with him, I trusted him completely. Looking back now, that blind trust feels naive, almost embarrassing, but at the time, there were no cracks in the illusion. To me, he was perfect. He wasn't just another boy, I thought he was the one. That belief wrapped around me like a comfort I didn't want to let go of, convincing me that maybe, just maybe, my life had finally given me something good. So when I tell you what I lost, it wasn't just a relationship. It was the illusion that I was safe with him, that love could be pure and loyal. It was the fairy tale ending I thought I had stumbled into, only to find out later that the entire story had been a lie. She wasn't just my best friend. She was the sister I thought life had forgotten to give me. From the first day we met, we clicked so easily it felt like we'd known each other forever. We survived crushes, bad grades, and embarrassing moments side by side, laughing until our stomachs hurt and crying into each other's pillows when life felt too heavy. She was the one I sent every stupid meme to, the one I called at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, the one who swore we'd stand in each other's weddings someday. If there was one person I never doubted, it was her. She knew everything about me. Every tiny detail, from my dream of traveling the world to my fear of being abandoned, was safe in her hands. Whenever I felt invisible to everyone else, she made me feel important. She defended me when others tried to bring me down and hyped me up when I didn't believe in myself. We even had inside jokes that could send us into fits of laughter across a crowded room. She wasn't just my friend, she was my person. When I started dating him, she was there from the very beginning. I remember the squeal in her voice when I first told her I had a crush, and the way she lit up when I said he liked me back. She urged me to go for it, said I deserved someone who made me feel special. Watching her beam with excitement over my happiness only made me love her more. She became our #1 supporter, celebrating our milestones, with me as if they were her own. She even joked once that if he ever broke my heart, she'd take him down herself. The truth is, I put her on a pedestal as much as I put him on one. In my mind, she was the one person who would never hurt me. I trusted her with my uncensored thoughts, my most vulnerable feelings about the relationship. She knew when I doubted myself, when I silently compared myself to other girls, when I feared I wasn't good enough. And every time she reassured me, he loves you, don't overthink it. That's what makes the irony so sharp sharp now. Because all those nights I cried to her about my insecurities, about wanting to hold on tightly to something good, she was secretly holding on to him. All the reassurances, all the comforting words. That wasn't loyalty. That was distraction. A way to keep me blind while she took the very thing I trusted her to protect. But back then, I couldn't see it. Back then, I believed in her as fiercely as I believed in him. To me, they were my two pillars of strength, the safest corners of my world. And I never imagined that the very people I leaned on most would be the ones to rip the ground out from under me. It didn't happen all at once. The first red flags came as small ripples, moments so fleeting I almost convinced myself I imagined them. But when you love someone, and when you trust your best friend with your whole chest, you don't want to believe your gut, you silence it. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. That's exactly what I did, even as things started to feel off. It began with his phone. He used to be so open, handing it to me to pick songs, showing me funny videos without hesitation, but suddenly, he kept it glued to his side. If it buzzed on the table, he'd lunge for it before I could even glance at the screen. When I teased him, joking, "Wow, got some big secrets there?" he gave this tight-lidded smile and shrugged it off. "Just work stuff," he'd say, though we both knew he didn't have a job important enough to warrant that level of secrecy. Then there was her, my best friend. She'd always laughed at his jokes, sure, but lately, it had changed. It wasn't just laughing, it was lingering. Her eyes shone a little too brightly. Her hand would graze his arm playfully a little too often. It wasn't obvious enough to be undeniable, but it was enough to make my stomach twist. Once I caught them exchanging a look I couldn't decipher. Not long, not blatant, but loaded with something I couldn't name. When I asked, half joking, "What was that about?" they both chuckled, dismissing me like I'd pointed out something ridiculous. "You're imagining things," she said, shaking her head. "You're really overthinking." That became the chorus I heard again and again. You're imagining things. You're overthinking. Whenever I voiced the tiniest bit of unease, they worked in tandem to gaslight me. If I mentioned his constant phone use, he'd sigh dramatically. "Do you really not trust me?" If I said my best friend seemed different, she'd pout. "I can't believe you'd think I'd ever do something like that to you." Each time I ended up apologizing, as though my instincts were crimes against them. The gaslighting worked. I started labeling myself paranoid, insecure, even broken. I told myself I was sabotaging something beautiful, that I was the problem. Instead of listening to my gut, I drowned it under excuses. They were close because she was part of our lives. He was secretive because privacy was normal. I convinced myself it was fine, even when the pit in my stomach said otherwise. Looking back now, those first flags weren't little ripples. They were the early waves of a storm about to destroy everything. But at the time, I brushed them aside, trying desperately to hold on to the illusion. Because if I admitted something was wrong, I knew it would mean questioning not just him, but her. And that was a betrayal too big for my heart to even consider. It started slowly, like a thread being pulled from the edge of a sweater, subtle at first, but impossible to stop once it unraveled. Suddenly, nothing felt solid. He was canceling plans last minute, mumbling about helping a friend or staying late. She was disappearing too, claiming she had family dinners or extra study sessions that never quite matched up with what she'd said the week before. On their own, the excuses sounded harmless, but when you put the pieces together, the stories didn't line up. I'd sit at home on nights we had planned dates, staring at my phone as the clock ticked past our meeting time. His texts always came late, vague, and rushed. "Sorry, something came up. Can't tonight. I'm swamped." I wanted to believe him so badly, but then I'd log onto social media later and see his activity. Posts liked at times when he claimed to be too busy. Once, I even spotted the edge of her jacket in the background of a photo on his story, quickly deleted minutes after it went up. I told myself it was a coincidence, but my chest tightened every time. The same thing happened with her. She'd skip our usual hangouts, claiming she needed time with her family, but then I'd overhear classmates mentioning they'd seen her near his neighborhood. When I pressed her, the way she fluttered her hands and laughed nervously only twisted the knife deeper. "You're connecting dots that aren't even there," she snapped once. "Why are you being so paranoid?" I tried confronting him too. I remember one night, after yet another canceled date, when I finally asked directly, "Are you hiding something from me?" He looked me right in the eyes, so calm, so convincing, and shook his head. "I can't believe you'd say that. Do you really think I'd hurt you like that? Baby, you're all I want." He said it with such certainty, his hand resting on mine, his eyes unwavering. In that moment, I felt crazy for even asking. That's what made their lies so dangerous. They were smooth, almost elegant. Every suspicion I mustered was turned into evidence against me. Whenever I pressed her, she'd act shocked and hurt, saying things like, "Wow, I can't believe you don't trust me after everything we've been through." Whenever I questioned him, he'd look wounded and whisper, "You really think that little of me?" I'd retreat, apologize, and try to bury the gnawing pit in my stomach, terrified of ruining the bond I held so tightly to. But underneath it all, tension seeped into my veins. I walked on eggshells around both of them, afraid of asking too much, afraid of looking like the insecure, jealous mess their words suggested I was. I silenced myself more and more, yet the lies seemed to grow louder. Their absences multiplied. Their excuses became rehearsed, like a script they had practiced together. The worst part was how isolated I felt. Who could I turn to when the two people at the center of my suspicions were the very ones I was supposed to lean on? I doubted myself so relentlessly that I began writing down timelines, comparing their stories just to see if I was imagining things. Each inconsistency became another splinter in my mind, but when I tried to speak it, they both smoothed the cracks with perfect words that left me questioning reality itself. I didn't realize it then, but I was being manipulated piece by piece, caught in a web they spun so carefully I couldn't see the strands until I was already tangled beyond escape. And deep down, a quiet dread grew. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how badly it would break me once the truth came out. It happened on one of those ordinary afternoons that end up branding themselves into your memory forever. I wasn't looking for proof. Honestly, by then, I was so exhausted from second-guessing myself that I had almost decided to stop pea-digging. But the truth has a cruel way of showing itself, whether you're ready or not. He had asked to borrow my laptop a few days before, saying his phone was glitching and he needed to finish some emails. I didn't think twice about it. After all, he was my boyfriend. But that day, as I went to log in for homework, I noticed his messaging app was still open. My stomach tightened as my eyes landed on a conversation pinned to the top of his chat list. It was her, my best friend. I don't know why I clicked. Maybe I already knew. Maybe my gut had been screaming all along and I was finally brave, or foolish, enough to listen. The second the thread opened, my entire body went cold. Messages flooded the screen, intimate and casual at the same time. The kind of things only two people in a relationship say to each other. Jokes with inside references, pictures I never wanted burned into my brain. Him calling her baby, her calling him ours, like I was the outsider. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my chest. As I scrolled further, it wasn't just flirting, it was months worth of deception. Dates canceled with me lined up perfectly with their secret meetups. Nights when she claimed she was sick suddenly made sense, paired with his text promising to cover for her with me. They weren't even careful anymore. Not really. They trusted that I would stay blind because they'd convinced me I was crazy for even suspecting. The final blow was a photo, her in his hoodie, lying on his bed, smiling at the camera with a smugness that made me want to scream. The caption was seared into me, "Feels right," and suddenly, everything I had buried made sense. The glances, the sudden closeness, the excuses and cancellations. I hadn't been paranoid. I had been right the whole time. I wish I could explain the pain of that moment, but words feel too small. It was wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. It was betrayal so sharp it carved me open from the inside out. I dropped the laptop so fast it thudded against the floor, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The room itself seemed to tilt around me, the air thick and suffocating. My best friend and my boyfriend, the two people I trusted most, had ripped away the ground under me, leaving nothing but emptiness. Memories began to reel through my mind like cruel home movies. The way she had comforted me when I cried about feeling insecure. The times he whispered, "You're the only one I want." The nights we all hung out together, laughter ringing out while they hid inside jokes I didn't know I wasn't part of. Every touch, every smile, every word that once felt safe became corrupted, rotting into reminders that I had been played for a fool. In that moment, I wasn't just heartbroken, I felt erased, like the life I thought I'd been living for months had been an illusion. A stage set built carefully for me to perform in while the real story played out behind my back. And standing there, shaking, my eyes blurred with tears, one thought pulsed louder than all the others. I will never be the same again. I didn't plan it. There was no neat speech tucked away in my head, no calm strategy. The rage and heartbreak boiled over until it carried me straight to him. I still had the image of her in his hoodie burned into my mind when I knocked on his door so hard the wood rattled. He opened it, smiling like nothing was wrong, and that smile snapped something inside me. "Don't you dare," I spat before he could even say hello. "Don't you dare act like everything's fine." I shoved the laptop against his chest. The screen lit up with the messages I'd uncovered. His eyes flickered down, and that split second of panic told me everything. At first, he tried to spin it. "It's not what it looks like," he muttered, voice trembling but rehearsed. When I laughed, a sound so bitter it scared even me, he dropped, tied the act and switched tactics, grabbing my hands like he could ground me. "Please listen. I love you. It was a mistake. Mistake. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Mistake. Months of lies, countless moments stolen from me, and he dared to call it a mistake. Then it was her turn. I texted her to meet me at our usual cafe, the same place where we'd shared everything from prom gossip to late night secrets. She walked in, all wide eyes and forced innocence. When I said, "I know," I watched color drain from her face. She stammered, denied, tried to weave excuses, how it just happened, how she never meant to hurt me. But as soon as she realized I had proof, the walls fell. Her expression hardened. "Fine," she snapped, "but you don't understand. He came to me. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd fall apart." That was the moment all the years of loyalty and friendship shattered to dust. I leaned across the table, tears in my eyes, my voice quivering but furious. "You sat there and listened to me cry about him. You hugged me, swore you'd protect me, and all the while you were the reason I was breaking. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? To know that my so-called best friend was stabbing me while I trusted her to guard my back? Neither of them had answers, not ones that mattered." He stayed stuck in apologies that sounded like rehearsed lines. She lingered in defensiveness laced with guilt. And through it all, I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry for being caught. I left both of them that day, shaking but lighter, like I had spat out poison that had been rotting inside me for far too long. They could keep their pathetic excuses and hollow words. What I carried now wasn't their lies anymore. It was the truth, and the raw, burning ache of betrayal finally spoken out loud. The fallout after the confrontation was like watching a bomb explode in slow motion. The truth didn't stay between the three of us for long. It spilled into the hallways at school, whispered in group chats, and plastered itself all over social media in the form of vague posts and half-hidden comments. People love drama, and this drama had everything: betrayal, gossip, heartbreak, and I was at the center of it. Some people sided with me right away. They remembered seeing the little things, the glances, the excuses, and admitted they had felt something was off but hadn't wanted to say it. Others, though, defended him or her, claiming I was blowing things out of proportion or being too dramatic. That part hurt the most. Like, even when I had the truth, the gaslighting still found a way to creep in through the mouths of bystanders. Being caught between pity and judgment was exhausting. Some classmates would stop me to whisper, "I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that." Others would avoid eye contact entirely, like betrayal was contagious and they didn't want to catch it. Walking into school every day felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew the lines of a script I hadn't agreed to perform. He didn't fade into the background either. My ex tried to win me back, suddenly popping up everywhere, begging me to listen. Long texts poured in, filled with promises that I was the one, and she meant nothing. It was insulting, watching him paint her like some meaningless side story when I knew how long it had gone on and how many times they had knowingly lied to me. Every word felt like another slap in the face. She wasn't any better. My ex-best friend rotated between fake guilt and hostile defensiveness. One day, she'd message me paragraphs about how sorry she was, how she couldn't sleep at night. The next, she'd glare at me in the hallway and mutter that I was making too big a deal out of it. Seeing her with other friends cut me the deepest, because once upon a time, I had been the one in that spot beside her, laughing, whispering secrets, feeling invincible. I wish I could say I handled it with grace, but the truth is I stumbled through those weeks raw and broken. Every decision felt like walking through fire. Do I answer his calls to scream at him? Do I block her number entirely? Or should I read every message just to torture myself? Do I keep defending myself to people? Or do I let them believe whatever narrative makes them feel entertained? It was suffocating, yes. But strangely, beneath the shame and anger, there was also a hint of liberation. The lies were no longer eating me alive from the inside. Everyone knew, and while it tore me apart to live under the microscope, I no longer had to pretend everything was fine. No longer had to plaster on a smile while the two people closest to me fed me poison. And maybe that's what healing starts with. The truth, however brutal, standing naked in the daylight. Healing wasn't some pretty Pinterest perfect journey. It was messy. It was nights spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling with tears soaking into my pillow, replaying every moment I ever trusted them and wondering how I could have been so blind. Some mornings I woke up with that familiar heaviness in my chest, like betrayal had become my shadow. Other days, I dragged myself out of bed fueled only by anger, promising I wouldn't let their choices ruin everything for me. At first, I isolated myself because I didn't trust anybody. I thought if he and she, people I loved more than anything, could turn on me, then what chance did I have with anyone else? I skipped hangouts, ignored texts, and built a wall so high no one could climb over it. But loneliness has a way of cracking even the thickest barriers. Eventual lie, I realized shutting everyone out was only giving them more of me to steal. Little by little, I let others in. New classmates who didn't know the whole story, kind coworkers at the part-time job I picked up, even acquaintances who checked in just to say I seemed different. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe new bonds could be real, that not everyone was out to destroy me. Those friendships became lifelines, people who valued me for who I was, not for how much I could forgive or how many lies I could ignore. I poured myself into school and work too, not because it erased the pain, but because it gave me something to control. Good grades, small savings from my job, even praise from teachers or bosses. It reminded me I was capable, that I wasn't worthless the way their betrayal had made me feel. Piece by piece, I started reclaiming parts of myself I thought had died. There were setbacks, of course. Some days I still caught myself scrolling too far back in our old photos, feeling that ache in my stomach that never fully disappears. There were times I wanted to text her, to ask her why again, as if another answer would finally make it sting less. But deep down, I started seeing the truth. Their betrayal wasn't proof I was unlovable. It was proof of who they were, and that was the shift. Instead of asking, what was wrong with me? I started asking, what was wrong with them? Because it takes a certain kind of brokenness to smile in someone's face while slicing them open from behind. It takes cowardice and cruelty to spend months lying without a flicker of guilt. What they did said everything about their character and nothing about my worth. I'm not going to claim I healed overnight or that I ever stopped aching entirely, but I began to see myself again in the mirror, not the humiliated girl who got played, but the survivor, the fighter, the person slowly stitching herself back together. And that glimpse of strength, as the first time I believed that maybe, just maybe, I'd be okay again. It was almost predictable that eventually they'd come crawling back, though the timing still caught me off guard. First it was him. Weeks had passed without a word, and then one night, my phone buzzed with a message so long I had to scroll through it. His words dripped with desperation. He admitted he had messed up, that he'd been confused, that he still loved me and wanted another chance. He painted their entire affair like it was some detour on the road back to me, as if betraying me for months was just a stumble. Reading it made my stomach turn. I could practically hear his voice in the way he tried to romanticize his regret, twisting his betrayal into some misguided journey of self-discovery. I typed 100 responses that night, everything from rage-filled paragraphs to cutting one-liners, but in the end, I erased them all. Because what could I say that wasn't already obvious? He hadn't been confused. He had been cruel. Then came her. Unlike him, she didn't message right away. It was almost 2 months later when she asked to meet in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed, more out of morbid curiosity than hope. We sat across from each other at the cafe we once claimed as ours. She looked guilty, nervous, fidgeting with the bracelet I once gave her. At first, she denied again, then quickly crumbled into tears. I didn't mean to steal him from you, she whispered. I made a mistake. Can't we go back to how it was? Her audacity nearly knocked the air out of me. Go back? How do you go back after gutting someone's soul? She tried to justify it by saying she'd felt lonely, that she'd been drawn into something she couldn't stop. The excuses tasted sour, and each one only made me angrier. The girl who once swore she'd never betray me was now asking me to understand the choices he'd gladly made. I left her words hanging in the air because none of them mattered. Whether they came wrapped in guilt or dripping with fake sincerity, the apologies were never about me. They were about them. They wanted to wash their hands, to be freed from the weight of their actions by passing it to me. Forgiveness, to them, was another way to escape accountability. That night, I realized the closure I kept waiting for would never come from them. They could beg, justify, twist the story into every shape imaginable, but none of it would stitch me back together. Closure was going to have to come from me, from choosing to let go, from deciding that their poison would not keep flowing through my veins. And so, I let their apologies rot in my inbox and hang unanswered in the air. I didn't forgive to free them. I chose peace to free myself. Moving on wasn't a clean break. It wasn't like I suddenly woke up one morning, tossed the memories aside, and walked into the sunlight untouched. The scars linger. Sometimes I still hear echoes of their laughter in places that used to feel safe. Sometimes, when trust is handed to me freely by new people, my first instinct is to flinch, to wonder how long it will take before they stab me in the back too. Those wounds don't disappear just because you want them to. But with time, I've learned something important. Scars don't mean weakness. They mean survival. Every tear I cried, every night I thought I'd never get my breath back, every moment I questioned my worth, all of it made me stronger. They broke me, yes, but I rebuilt myself. And the version standing here now is tougher, wiser, and more self-aware than the naive girl who trusted them with everything. I don't deny what happened anymore. I don't bury it. Their betrayal is part of my story, but it will never be the whole book. They no longer control me, no longer get to own even a single pie. Sea of my heart or my identity. For months, I let their choices define me. I was the girl who got cheated on by her boyfriend and best friend. Now, I'm more than that. I'm the girl who clawed her way back to herself, who chose to rise rather than drown in poison she didn't pour. I've found new friends, built new routines, and poured my energy into things that fulfill me, not people who exploit me. I laugh again, genuinely. Not because everything is perfect, but because I know I have the strength to survive survive even when life rips me apart. Love doesn't scare me, but I'll never let blind trust guide me again. I know my worth now, and it's not up for debate. Maybe one day they'll look back and realize what they lost. Maybe they'll keep convincing themselves it wasn't that bad. Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that I walked away from the ashes carrying nothing but lessons and self-respect. So here's my truth. I was shattered, but I rebuilt myself stronger. I was betrayed, but I am not defined by betrayal, and I refuse to let them own me ever again. I own my story now, and that is my closure.